Hi,
Hello.
welcome everybody. My name's Amy. Some of you might know me from Creative HQ. And yeah, I want to welcome you all on this very cold Wellington night, wherever you are in New Zealand or the world. We are joined today for our Creative HQ sessions with Kaylene Langford, who is with Startup Creative. And yeah, Kaylene's going to be going through with us how to start a side hustle. So yeah, I'll let Kay take it away from here. If anyone has any questions, you can yeah, pop them in the chat, and then Kay will get to them at the end. Cool. Cheers, Kay.
Amazing. Thank you for having me, Amy. And maybe there's a few people coming in, but welcome everybody. My name is Kay, and I'm the founder of Startup Creative. And firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I'm meeting today, which is here on Gadigal land in Sydney, Australia, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. It's so nice to be here. Before we kick off, maybe if you're sitting there and some of you might be listening, you're welcome to put your videos on and interact. Put questions in as you go. But I've left in the chat box there a question for you. So it's asking if you have an idea for a side hustle but haven't quite started yet, whether you've started. Oops, that's meant to say wing it. I will disclose that if you have signed up and it got postponed, I had COVID a couple of weeks ago, and one of my things was that my brain would read words and not know if they're spelled right. So I'm going to blame it on that. And if I have a slight cough at some point, excuse me. But yeah, do you have an idea and you haven't started? You've started and you're here for some extra help. And also if you're here and you just want to start a side hustle and maybe haven't quite come up with what that would be yet. I'd love to hear if you can pop that in the chat. If you have any questions or concerns or you can't hear things, Amy, I think will be online. So feel free to put that in the chat and questions as well. Cool. I'm excited to jump into this. So the other thing that I just like to say at the beginning is I'm here for the questions. Like, this is an opportunity for you guys to get as much as support as you want and need. So there's no silly questions in my mind, and I really like being able to tailor the advice and support for you so that you walk away going, cool, that was really helpful. There's nothing worse than turning up on a cold night, although sorry to say we've got beautiful sunshine here, and walking away going, what a waste of time. So please ask me questions if it's not making sense or you need further clarification or you'd like it to apply to what your specific business idea might be. Cool. So if you're there, a few people have just said they can't see. Amy's reposted it, but just pop in there, and I would love to hear if you've got a business or a side hustle, or you're a freelancer, or you've got a passion that you'd like to make a viable business, or you don't have an idea, that's totally fine, but you just want to get out of your job maybe. Or the other one might be that you've started and you're just needing a little bit of extra help because I don't know about you guys, but when I started, I was completely making it up as I went, and figuring it out as I went as well. Okay, cool. So we've got people in here who have started and they're salvaging plastic parts of dead kitchen appliances, which is awesome. What is that going to be? Sustainable product they've been working on. Amazing. Thank you. What else have we got? Cool. Well, I'll keep an eye on those as we come, because then I can reference them and apply them. So we've got Francine has tried multiple times doing different things, but needing some help to get it off the ground. Perfect. Amazing. Okay, so how to start a side hustle. Just a little bit about me to kick us off. My name is Kay, obviously. So in 2014, I think about 7 years ago now, nearly 8 years ago, I was working in corporate. I was advising government on program development and best practices. I thought it was my dream job. I spent my life building that career into, climbing the ladder, and quickly got pretty burnt out and realized that, I was getting up every day and dragging myself to this job, and, was commuting to work up to 3 hours some days, and was actually started getting really bad headaches in the morning, which is probably the first time that I really questioned, was I happy and was I doing what I loved? And was this being an adult and this being life? Is this going to be the rest of my life of, feeling miserable and, working 5 days a week to get to the weekend, really. And I ended up having such severe headache that I went to the doctor, and the doctor rushed me off to a brain scan. I spent 24 hours thinking, why is she taking this so seriously and what's happening? And, what would I do if I got some bad news? And I ended up getting good news, thank goodness, and it was nothing drastic. It was doctor mostly saying stress, and asked me what my quality of life was. So when I had to answer that question and really sit with it, I realized that I was unhappy and felt stuck and bored in what I was doing, and wasn't for me. And so it wasn't this overnight, like I'm quitting my job. It was, I felt really rock bottom. And if anyone here has felt close to burnout, you know that it's not a nice place to be. But I had this realization that no one was coming to save me. And, it's the real adult moment where you're like, no one's going to come and bail you out and say, hey, you're not happy. Let's find you something else. And so I started just reading books and going to courses, and I picked up this book by chance one day called Think and Grow Rich. And I thought it was going to be a bit of a hype, American self-help kind of book. And anyway, I just reluctantly was like, all right, what's this? And within a few chapters, I was like, wow. And there was this quote in there that said, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. And for me, I was a long distance runner in school, and something came over me of being like, right, you got to get yourself up and do something about this. And there was this part in the book that talked about, what is your passion, and what do what's your skill set, and what are you good at, and how can you maybe make money off that? And entrepreneurship and startup was starting to be a bit of a buzzword. And as I went looking into entrepreneurship world, I realized like this is me. The way they described it was that they would have 30 jobs before they're 30, and they moved quickly and weren't afraid to make mistakes and were tech savvy and had unique ideas. And I thought that's how I like to work. I'm not a good employee. I like to move fast and get creative and do things differently. And so I started looking at what I was good at. And I had won this award for a program that I had written that was helping university students to volunteer their time for kids at risk and kids in shelters and disadvantaged situations. And it had done so well that, it scaled across Queensland, the state that I was living at the time. And I looked at that and thought, well, that was an idea in my head, and I got branding for it. I got funding. I built a team. I wrote the course. I trained people, and I wrote the program. And so I thought I can teach that. I can teach people how I came up with an idea and then I made it, a reality. And that's what a business is. And so I started selling that as a course. I sat down and said, how do I do this? And I created a 6-week course on how to turn your passion into a business. And I started selling it to universities and local councils and businesses. And eventually it evolved into what it is today, which is an online community. We've got a podcast, a magazine, and then last year we released my book, How to Start a Side Hustle. As well as I do business coaching, events, workshops, and program development still. So I'm very lucky now to say that I am awake in my dream of doing what I love, and no more morning headaches. I try to take Mondays off altogether because I still feel like I have PTSD from Mondayitis of working in a 9 to 5 that you hate, and the dread of getting up on a Monday morning. So I'm really excited. I've worked with thousands of people, let one-on-one in coaching sessions over the last 7 years, all around the world. Run workshops in New York, across all of Australia, in New Zealand, in Christchurch with your startup space there a few years back. And it's been really lucky to have a successful podcast and the book. So I put the link at the top of, if you want to get a signed copy, you can grab one there through our website. I send them out to New Zealand. I think there is a stockist in, I'm not sure where it might be, but I'll send a link. You might save on postage if you are in New Zealand, and or you can grab it on Amazon or Booktopia or whatever your favorite bookshop is, hopefully. But yeah, sounds good. Let's jump into it. Have I got any questions so far? Is that all making sense for everybody? Yeah, cool. Okay, well, we've got somebody here in consulting and training and formulating, selling men's cologne. Love it. So good. Keep putting your ideas in there, guys. I'd love to hear them and see how I can weave them into the convo today. All right, I've got some slides here, so we'll jump into it. Okay, how to start a side hustle. Okay, so one of the best things, or I guess like my favorite things, when I was asked to write this book by a publishing company, I was researching into everything that helped me to get my idea off the ground and why having a business was so important to me. Before we start, actually, what I might say is, because I was asked this question today on an interview, and I'll keep an eye on the bot on the chat there. Thank you, Anna. It's really lovely. And so a side hustle, I guess, like I was interviewed today and someone said, well, what is a side hustle? And the way that I describe it in the book is that it's a something that you do on the side that's not your main income, but it obviously makes you money on the side. The other thing, I guess, that is important to acknowledge is sometimes people call side hustling like driving for Uber. And then also sometimes side hustling is maybe freelancing or, outsourcing. Just like selling something that you see an opportunity to make some money off on the side, really. Yeah. Yes, the session is being recorded, Jackson. So that's how I define a side hustle. I guess my majority of how I teach and the people that I work with is the people who are wanting to turn their passion into viable businesses. And so a lot of the research that I found, especially diving deep into focus, motivation, inspiration, and what makes a successful entrepreneur or a side hustler or business owner, is that when we do something that we love, or it's solving a problem to a solution, it's adding a solution to a problem that we've personally experienced, we're more likely to have success in our businesses. Because if we love what we do, we get up every day, and that was what I sat down. I was like, what am I good at? What do I love to do? I can train people. I like public speaking. I like sharing stories, all these different things. So I designed my business around that. And every day I got up and I was so excited to work on it on weekends and after hours. The other thing is that if we'll jump into this more, but like a business is a solution to a problem that you've experienced or you've seen somebody else experience, or a value add to somebody's life, how to make their life easier or better, or bring joy or whatever it might be to that person's life. And when the research shows that those are the things that help us to really have success, because when it gets hard, that's when we keep going, that's when we push through. Because I'm not about to sit here and say it's easy and quit your job. Just for a full disclosure, after having kind of my realization, the first thing that I did was drop back to 4 days a week at my full-time job, and I worked 1 day a week at home on Startup Creative. And then after 6 months, my boss came to me and my contract was due to be renewed. And she sat me down and was like, you don't belong here. And I was like, bitch, like furious. I was like, I'm about to lose my job. And she was like, I can see you're bursting with creativity and you're wanting more. So she allowed me to take the risk to transition out. And so I took a 3 or 4 month contract. And instead of re-signing my 12-month contract, I decided I'm going to do this 4-month contract. I'll finish the work that I'm doing, and then I've got 4 months to, do 2 days a week on this contract, and the rest of the time I've got to make startup creative work. So it wasn't an overnight quit the job thing. But yes, and everybody's different in our circumstances. So for me, it worked really well to give myself that pressure cooker to make the transition. But I guess a lot of the things it's something that I'm really passionate about side hustling is that with the research where I really started writing the book is that once upon a time, as humans, we lived in communities. So we lived in villages, in tribes, in community. And the roles of the community were to contribute. So people had different skill sets that were handed down to them. We all contributed what we didn't have to each other. We bartered. We rose with the sun and we went down with the sun, and we had autonomy over our lives. We valued community and family and contributing and equal, exchange. What happened is that the Industrial Revolution started to evolve, and people with money bought these factories and built these factories and said, hang on, what you're doing out there in community and craftsmanship and, these skill sets that we all, just do on a small scale, we can do it over here faster, quicker. And it was a lot of different things. The trains were invented, so there was a higher demand to sell further, currency, all of those different things that led to the high demand of cheaper and faster and more. And so people were pulled out of communities to work in industries into factories. And what happened there is there's lots of research on this, but we were, because of their demand and their power over, the marketplace. And so we went into factories, women, children, everybody went in. That's where we punched in and we punched out. And we did repetitive tasks. So you were taught a repetitive movement. And so instead of, we're going into the factories in the dark and doing a repetitive movement and then leaving in the dark, being accountable to somebody else, losing autonomy over our lives. And then some of the research I found went as far as to say that started the rise of some mental health that they actually have, researched into generations living in our age now. As a result of losing that autonomy and the freedom to choose and the creativity in their life. And when I read about this, I was like, this is why working for ourselves and doing what we love is so innate and so important for so many of us. And, my 8 years in business and the tens of thousands of people I've spoken in front of and interviewed and all of the worked with, almost everyone, no matter where I go, whether it's a work event or a bar on the weekend, as soon as someone finds out you're a business coach, they want to tell you about their side hustle idea. So I think it's something that we're all really passionate about. And the way I guess, the beauty of the Industrial Revolution is that we're doing this right now is the internet, and we can have that, but we also have things like, affordable websites and PayPal and Instagram and all of these different technologies that allow us to access global marketplaces and very affordably, which is a really important part of starting a business and getting it off the ground without, I guess, another aspect to a side hustle is that you can test it out. I think when I started out, it was like, I went in to learn about business, and it felt like men in suits who had all of this lingo and important business documents, and I felt like I didn't belong. And so Startup Creative, how to start a side hustle, our podcast, our website, everything that we do is straight up business advice, because I wanted to give it to people in layman's terms that didn't make them feel isolated. And that's what I needed. And I wanted to hear it through storytelling and practical. Just tell me how you did it, and then I'll go and give it a shot myself. And then as it was working, I was able to teach other people across the world. So there is an advantage, but it's a nice way to be able to test something out without having to break the bank and, quit your job and throw everything into it. So that's my little spiel on that. Give me a shout if you've got any questions along the way with this. Okay, this is where we're talking about the being forced to leave our autonomous, self-created lives, work mundane jobs under constant supervision for minimal wage led to a decline in physical and mental health of the population. Okay, so a business and a successful startup always comes with the idea that you come up with. So like I mentioned, a lot of us probably have an idea that we go, I'm really good at this, or I can see this problem and someone has to do something about it, right? Whether it's something that we've seen, or maybe a parent that we've, encountered, or one of our siblings or niece or nephews, that we can actually say, oh, this, we feel that pain point and we go, someone's got to create something better, right? Um, there's also artists and creatives who go, well, I want to hear this kind of music, or see this kind of art, and get really inspired from that self-expression as well. But the first thing to ask yourself, and if you're refining your idea and you're trying to figure out, somebody shared about, had tried a few things but maybe not quite taking off, a really good place to come back to is like, what do I love to do? What am I good at? What have people asked you to help with? Maybe what have people told you that you're good at? Maybe, I was giving this example on the interview this morning of like, maybe you took up a hobby of crocheting during lockdown and everyone's commented on your crochet hats. Maybe that's an idea. But starting with, this is a quote from the guys from Airbnb, that if we tried to think of a good idea, we wouldn't have been able to think of a good idea. You have to find a solution to a problem in your own life. So not it's your life or somebody else's is always a good one to access, because what you'll find is, where we get to down the track, is that they become your target market, and a business that really understands who they're out to serve and how they can help is more likely to have success. Yeah. Is that making sense for everybody? Yeah. Okay. So the first thing is that you want to really understand. So at this stage, you're coming up with your idea. So this is where some of us here have talked about, yep, this is what I'm offering and this is what I'm doing. And then what we really want to, what you now need to do is go, okay, well, now I need to actually find out if there's somebody who's willing and able to pay for what I think is a good idea. And this is where a lot of, they'll say 1 in 3 businesses fail in the first 3 years or whatever. I think that's not necessary. I think that's a result of a founder or somebody who's come up with the idea who hasn't put their target market at the center. So unless your customer is the center of what you do, then you're likely to fail, because your customer is the person with the money who's going to exchange their money for what you have to offer, right? And so if you don't fully understand what they need, or you don't fully meet their needs, then why would they transact with you? Yeah. So it's like, yeah, maybe it's not quite what I'm looking for. I could get it here cheaper or whatever. So it's not about you. It starts with you, and that's the idea, but then that's where we have to keep refining it. And something that, like, I like to suggest to all of my coaching clients is that your that feedback and that feedback that you get from your target market and people who are testing your product or service is absolutely vital. And at the beginning, it might be really hard to hear, and you don't want to. It hurts because you're like, "But I love this," But without that, then you're creating something that you want to create, and it's not about the person who's actually got the money to make it a viable business. Yeah. So I think I've said it already, but business is an exchange of value for money. So when you clearly articulate, this is the value that I have to bring to your life, this is how it's going to help, this is a solution it's going to offer, this is the value that I can bring, you should, when you nail that for the right person, you should get that really easy exchange. A really good example to start to look out for in your own life is to think about those times where you're like, oh, that's exactly what I've been looking for. And you just, you pay and you don't even look at the price, or you get to that point where you're just like, yes, finally, thank you. And you want to tell everyone about it. that's when a brand or a business has really nailed what you, or another really good example of that is like that brands where you're like, I will never try a different brand. This is my brand. They get it right every time. And, you know, skincare is just perfect example of that. People who get on the brands and stick to what they know. So you want to ask yourself, what problem are you solving? And then how will it make their lives better? And then you really want to obsess over it. You really want to get to know them and understand them, and get as much feedback as you possibly can. Yeah. A really good, one of my favorite quotes here is that, like, when you try to be everything for everyone, you accomplish being nothing to anyone. And I think that's when we start out in business and we're saying, you know, I just want any customer, especially now because of the saturation of how many businesses do exist and are trying to get our attention all of the time. Niching down and being really clear about who it is that you want to talk to, and why exactly this is for them, the better it is, because people are looking for the value behind what the brand founder stands for, what's their story, what other people have thought. And they're doing all of that in the background and looking for why you're exactly the right person for them. Yeah. Okay. So I just want to touch on this because there's some questions which I'll send as a worksheet for you guys in the book. And there's in the what chapter is it? Chapter 5 is all about understanding your audience. So the detail here, I just want to give you some references of how deeply we want to go, is understanding what they value. How will this make them feel? Why would they come to you for this solution? What's missing from other solutions? Because it's okay that there's other businesses that exist. Maybe you've got to come up with your point of difference and why they come to you. What other brands might they like and trust and already spend money with? What don't they like about a brand? What's non-negotiable for them? Maybe that's where the brands invest their money, or their type, you know, sustainable packaging or ethical, you know, environmental friendly, you know, making of things. What time of day are they looking for this solution? Where are they looking for this solution? And then you can go into things like, yeah, what is their social life? What's their family makeup? What do they do for fun? How are they, how much are they earning? Where are they spending their spare time? All of those, there's a few extras there, but I'll send those as activity sheets for you guys. But the idea around that is that all of that information will help you define what your brand is going to be, what your price point, what your tone of voice is, what your marketing strategy. An example of this is I interviewed a lady once who ran a kids wear company, very successful, and she realized based on her online metrics that her target market was online at 4 a.m, up breastfeeding their kids. And so she was able to she was running ads at that time and ended up making her most sales, because that's when the mum was able to sit and scroll their phone, right? So that level of all of this information, you know, it helps you. If you're targeting somebody who really values sustainability and the environment and ethics, then, you know, being really transparent and open on your website about your sourcing and all of those things is going to help you to convince your target market that you're the right person for them. Is there any questions on that so far? We don't have many faces to look at. Francine's made a good point here about if your target market isn't your family or friends, potentially, which is really good point to make. So my next slide is, how do we get into the game? And this is where you want to start. So you do your research and you kind of understand who you think really wants this and why they want it. And then you have to get out there. You have to really start to take the risk. And this might be starting an Instagram account, registering a business name, getting a logo done, maybe posting on your personal Facebook and telling people that you've got a service to offer, sending out a group message and saying, does anyone need their dog washed, or whatever it might be, right? But the idea, and this is where the side hustle can really help, is that you have the chance to just tell people what you want to do. You can, once you've done that target market work, you can actually go, well, where are they spending their time? When are they looking for this? And go out and, what do they value? Put your little pitch together and say, this is what I've got and this is how I think it'll help. And, here's, what do you think? And you want to start to get some paying customers. And you don't want the first paying customers necessarily to be your friends and family. You will probably get that. A lot of people do, but you also want to get people who maybe are friends of friends and family, or that you don't. A lot of my clients will be so happy when they get their first customer who they don't know who it is. And it proves that somebody is willing and able to pay for what you have. And once you've got that first paying customer, that you can start to build, okay, well, what did you think of it? And get lots of information out of them, and then go out and find more of them, really. So this is where lots of people start to drop out. They get too scared, they procrastinate, they don't want to put their website up. They do all of these different things to avoid. It's easier to talk about the idea, right? And I think we've already touched on this, but quitting the day job is not necessarily what you do at this stage. This is where you just start to validate and tell people what you're doing and see if anybody's interested. If it's not landing, that's where you take the feedback, you come back to the drawing board and you kind of tidy it up a little bit. Yeah. But one of my favorite quotes, this is probably my favorite quote, is, a year from now, you'll wish you started today. And there's no such thing as an overnight success and, launching it and having all of these people rush in. It really is starting before you're ready and getting out there and giving it a go and putting one foot in front of the other every single day. And, that all of these little steps and activities and workshops that you're doing and what you're, seeking to, build, and the feedback that you're getting all becomes that little steps further in the direction of this dream and this goal. Yeah. Okay. So once you start to get that first paying customer and you can get that feedback and you can get the validation and you're like, okay, somebody has money and they want to spend it on this. How do we find more of them? And this is where you can actually start to set up your branding. So, you might want to invest in logo and website, and, maybe there's some flyers or posters or packaging that you can put a bit of extra money in. The idea is that the branding is going to tell the story on your behalf, right? So they're telling the story of, we all know brands are ways that we express ourselves. So wearing certain brands or buying certain brands are ways that we help to tell other people who we are and what we stand for. We have brand loyalty, but a really good example is, like a coffee shop that you can pretty much determine the type of coffee shop that you're going to work in based on who you are as a person. So for me, I like a batch brew or a pour over black coffee, and I like a barista who knows what they're doing. So I'm happy to go and spend, I will admit that I've probably spent $7 on a coffee before in Melbourne. And, but for me, it's like, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a really slick coffee shop with minimal things in there, and that's really honed in on the coffee, compared to someone who might be like, yeah, you know what, I'm keen to go to the 7-Eleven and get a $1 one. So that's all based on brand alignment. Yeah. Okay, so someone's saying, how do you find the motivation, the discipline to work on your side hustle after your 9 to 5? Preach, Shiva. I love that question. Thank you. I think it's like, if you were here from the beginning, it's this idea of getting really clear on what it is that you want to do and why you want to do it. And, for me, a business and a side hustle was never about the money. It was about the freedom for me. I felt stuck, and, that I wasn't being able to be creative, or, I was missing out on events with my family and friends because all of my time and energy was going into this job. And so for me, I got really clear on why I wanted to start, and that was about freedom and setting myself up for a life where I got to design it. I got to take Mondays off. I got to work as hard as I want and have that unlimited income. So I really got clear and visualized that and was like, this is what I want. I want to, and I think everyone's got different reasons for that, but definitely sitting and starting with, why do you want to work? Why do you want this side hustle? And not necessarily, it might be, some people it is financial freedom. And get so clear. And a lot of, motivation research and papers that I've been reading of late, there's a lot of like science and experiments and things that go into understanding what motivates people and makes them successful. And one of the things is that they want it bad enough. And I see this in my podcast interviews over and over again, is that people get so clear about what the other side is. And that for me, the people that I work with, I'm like, a business and working for yourself is a vehicle to design the life of your dreams. You're no longer, in this, going back to that factory example of losing autonomy and freedom and creativity over your life. So yeah, that was for me, is that I wanted it bad enough, and also having a plan, doing this stuff, and knowing that, when it's one thing to be like, one day I'd like to start a business, but if you to sit down and actually go, well, what needs to happen to get that idea off the ground, then sitting and having a to-do list, so that it's when you sit and the reason you have a to-do list or a goals list is that when you sit down to work and you've had a full day of work, then you're able to minimize your brain's capacity to be like, well, what do I have to do on my side hustle? So you can sit down and, just a bit off topic here, but while we're here, what are the dreams and the goals and the vision? And you can really go, well, one day this would be why, what I would love to have for myself. And then break that down into a to-do list. And then when you sit down to work, pick up that and start working through it. It'll minimize your brain's ability to get distracted or overwhelmed and, feel like you can't do it. So how bad do you want it is my question. Why do you want it? Really get clear on what that future looks like. I visualized it every single day. I was like, one day I will get to decide who I work with, I will get to be on stage. I will get to have a book. All of those things were a future dream of mine. And I got up every day and, I got asked this question the other day about something about investment in my business. And, I needed to cut my teeth. I needed to get up and go through all the hard days to get to where I am and learn the lessons. So even if it's one thing every single day that you do on your business, it eventually it takes you in the direction of where you want to be. And they're like, I'm 7 years in and I'm still learning and I'm still being like, what's one thing I can do some days? So it can be really overwhelming, but when you've got a deep sense of why you're doing it, I think that really will help with driving it. Okay, so a brand is where you really start to package it up, and does that answer your question? Hopefully, feel free to chuck some more in there. Okay, so your brand is talking to your audience. So our example is that for Startup Creative, it was straight up business advice, no bullshit. Let's just say it how it is. Our aim is to inspire, educate, and grow creative entrepreneurs and tell their personal startup stories. Thanks, Shiva. I've got a bunch of podcasts on some of this stuff as well that will I can share with you guys about motivation and setting the right amount of goal. One of the biggest things that I think people really struggle with is that they go, I've got an idea and here's the vision, and we want it straight away. But breaking it down into digestible steps and goals, so that it's, when research shows that if your goal is set too high, then you actually will attempt it. And if it's too high for your skill level or your knowledge level or time commitments, then 90% of people who attempt something because they've set their bar too high will actually kick themselves out of the attempt altogether. And they'll just go, oh, well, I didn't do it. I'll, next time. But if you set the right level of just like, what's the next best thing that I can do? What's something that feels achievable? And you can challenge yourself enough to grow and implement, but not too high that it's going to, be unachievable. Then you'll just keep growing, like climbing that mountain. And every step you take, you get a new perspective and new people show up and new advice and new understandings and doors opening. So hope that helps. Okay. So back to this, great question though. Thank you. It's really important. Your branding should speak on your behalf is pretty much what I want to say here. It should be a consistent across all platforms. And for me, that straight up business advice meant that, I was running my events in restaurants and bars, and, we do bright, fun colors, and we make things creative, and we don't, the book, if anyone hasn't seen it, is very, step by step, bullet points and activities, and just breaking it down so it's not this big boring document of like, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start. Cool. Okay, so then what happens is you've refined your idea, you've got an idea of who wants it, you go out and you test it, you find those first few people, then you go, cool, yep, it's a real thing, I'm going to make it a brand and a business, I'm going to do the professional stuff. And then we go and find more people who want this, right? And that's all marketing is putting your brand and your business and your idea in front of more people. So obviously we all know this probably, I'm sure, if you're online in any in shape or form, but content creation is a really good way to be able to get out in front of your target market. It's not the only way. So if you hate content creation, don't get overwhelmed. But going out and to your audience and saying, this is how I can help you. This is the problem we're solving. Sometimes it's good to do some fun things as well. Like, if you're a yoga brand and you're asking people to come to a yoga class, well, they're not going to spend all their time coming to yoga class. You don't want to just say, come to yoga. You might say, well, this weekend after yoga, here's a beautiful hike to go on, or here's a beautiful winter soup recipe. All those things, is about building a relationship with your audience. Would you say that it's still achievable to do all of this without social media? Yes, absolutely. I don't think social media does my head in and a lot of people's head in. It has its perks and it can definitely be of service, but it's not the only way. So a mailing list is actually my favorite thing to grow, and prioritize that over social media. Because it's a database that you own and that you can give more information in. And the way that social media is going is that it's so fast paced that I mean, keen to hear you guys' experience, but I don't think that it's as much about stopping and buying things off social media. It's brand awareness. It's good to get your name out there and tell people that you're doing it, but I don't think we're really clicking through and shopping much on social media. We're actually buying through websites and which we click through probably an email, right? Or we Google it. So the idea is to have 7 ways in which people can find you, which is that is 7 touch points, which is social, it could be social media, podcast, magazine, book, flyers, market stands, collaborations, giveaways, pop-up shops, lots of different ways, YouTube channel. Lots of different ways that you can get out and get in front of people, and tell them that you exist. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just, getting out there, and every single week, how are you getting in front of more of your paying customer? If you are doing that content creation with websites, blogs, social media, email list, 1 in 4 pieces of content is a call to action. I shouldn't have put that in there. That's a lingo that I said I would never use. But it's saying, come and buy from me. A lot of the research that we're seeing is the trends are, people are hyper aware of being sold to now. We're so on, vigilant of like, well, is this, is it fake news? Is it clickbait? If I click on that, are you going to charge my card, or are you going to, send me 10 billion emails that I'll never be able to unsubscribe from? We're so hyper vigilant to it. So your idea for brand, and that's why that target market stuff is so vital, is that you want to sit there and go, what else do I want to know about? How else can I show this person that I understand them and their lifestyle, not just sell to them all the time? And that's, that yoga brand is a good example of, understanding that you understand who they are, and, what your brand also, maybe, if it's a fashion label, what else does it style well with? all of those different things, because you've got to consider it like, you know, consumers are looking for relationships with their, it's very intense, guys. But having a relationship and a real person behind the brand, and somebody who, yeah, if they ask a question they'll get an answer, or you know, there is an email or a way to contact them by email, and all of those things come with us as consumers wanting the trust and the authenticity from the brand. So having those ways to make people laugh, or give them a free recipe, or you know, tell them what you're up to on the weekend, are ways to connect with your audience as well and be a real person. And then measure everything. So every time we're doing a marketing tactic, you want to measure it. You know, I think a lot of people just be like, well, I'm just going to do all of these things. My tip is to pick a couple of them, and get out and test them, and see what results you get, and where your target market likes hearing from you, buying from you, what time of day. Yeah, I did this with a client the other day, and we looked at all of their last bookings, and we sat down and went, okay, well, they've come from referrals because they heard about you through somebody else in like an online platform, or because they got given a discount code. And so we were like, well, let's just start there, and let's give those three things an active shot and see if we can get more people from there. Okay, this is a bit of, that's what we're touching on before, which is this idea of the biggest thing, I guess, that is like, yes, we can. I really do believe everyone can have a business idea, and that there's plenty to go around, and you know, there's more than enough of, you know, ways to start businesses. But the people who actually come up with good ideas and stick to them and make them successful are the people who are able to get up every single day and do that one thing in the direction of their dream and their goal, and that they want it bad enough. And so these are some of the things that I've seen over the years that help people to stay the course, you know, because, you know, my 7 years of people who started out with me who aren't around anymore. And it does get hard, and I'm not about to say it's easy. And there's going to be days when you want to give up, and maybe things will have to change or pivot a little bit. But that's all part of the process of making sure you still love what you do, and that there's still a need for it in your audience. So personally, I like a morning routine. Some of the research I did around that, for the book, was that, you know, we have it naturally an increased dopamine in the morning because our brain is more alive to help us get up and out of bed and start our day. So having a morning routine where dopamine is the release chemical that gives us a reward chemical hit for achieving something. So it also motivates us to take action. So we have a natural dopamine hit. We can then, you know, do some journaling or write out our to-do list or whatever that might be, and carve out that time to get really clear about what you're going to get started on today. Another thing for those of you who were asking about when to work on it, it's not always, everyone's schedules and lives and commitments are different, but you know, maybe it's one day, once a month, you can, you know, take a day off, a sick day, or you know, take a Sunday to go out to, you know, sit in a park and just you write out your goals and listen to some podcasts and get clear on your to-do list and your actions for the next week. I personally like on a Sunday night sitting down and getting really clear about what's on for my week, and what's the important thing that I need to get done in my business, and then what's on my to-do list to make sure that that gets done. I have had coaches and mentors, and that's why I love doing it for myself now from the very beginning, because it does get hard and you get roadblocks and you get stuck and you need somebody. And I think, you know, there was many times where I tried to reinvent the wheel and do it all myself, and having somebody outside of you give you a bit of a leg up or a cheat sheet or tell you that your idea is good always helps you to stay motivated and on task. And you know, I don't know any industry that, you know, successful athletes and everything, every other industry that has somebody who gives a performance review and support. And you know, it's really hard to do it all yourself, especially when you've come from a 9 to 5 to be like, well, now I'm everything, right? So having somebody to help you to stay clear about the direction and what needs to be done. Surrounding yourself with the people who've done it, and believe that you can too. we actually emit a science that can now take a photo of our energy fields and the energy that we can emit as humans, or we do emit, because our body is made up of energy. And that, that for me, when I read that, I was like, no wonder where who we surround ourselves with. So putting yourself in these rooms all the time, and having those mentors or friends that you can lean on, or being in a co-working space one day a month, or getting together with a few others to do some work on your businesses and get support and advice. All of those things will help you to stay the course and keep seeing the big picture, because there's always lots to do. Like today, I was like, oh, I went to put a blog post up and it's not pushing through to another page on my website. And I was like, I don't have time to fix my website. I don't even know how to do it. So I emailed somebody else. I was like, can you fix this? Because shit will happen. But you have a chance to be like, how bad do I want this? And am I going to make it happen? Or am I going to give up? Because that's, giving up is okay. Maybe you'll come back with another idea as well. But if you really want this and you get really clear about that, then absolutely choose to keep finding and asking yourself, how can I make it happen? So if you jump into the book, there's also money mindset, there's pricing, how to do some goal settings, and scaling and beyond, as well as some other chapters we weren't able to get into. But Amy is saying this, my morning routine. So my morning routine, I aim, just so you know, that you can get the book. I'll just exit that and get into some Q&A if you want to put some questions in there, and we'll come back here. My morning routine is, what do? I meditate. I tend to meditate. I can't always. I actually, before I even open my eyes, I do this thing that I'm like, okay, how do I want to feel today? And I set my intention, and before my mind starts racing into overwhelm and fear, I just take a deep breath and go, okay, yes, her book is on Amazon. Then I sit down and go, okay, what is, I want to be clear or grounded or whatever today. And I try to start my day as in charge of my emotional state, because anything can happen with emails or workload and stuff like that. So if nothing else, start your day before there's this moment before we wake up where as we're waking up, that there's this twilight zone of we're coming into consciousness, where we start to identify and stress and overwhelm with who we are and what we're doing. So being able to use that little twilight zone to be, the neuroscience will show that you're in a more susceptible state to impact your unconscious mind and set your intention for what you will focus on today. So yeah, that's a really good place to start. I've just gotten back to exercise after COVID, and it's just really simple walks, because staircases are just exhausting. But that's kind of what I do. And I always have a coffee in stillness and just look at my to-do list or journal or read a book and fill my cup up before I go and do coaching and workshops and content and emails all day. Any other questions? I feel like it's there's quite a lot there. I'll send Amy, we'll have this recording sent out, and then I'll send you those target market questions for you guys to work on, as well as some podcasts that you might like to check out for some extra mindset tips, I think is another topic we could go into. And I do mentoring and coaching. Yes. So my website, I'll put it in here, is startupcreative.com.au. And Amy's just said, if you'd like a copy, I'll just find you the Amazon. Was there any other questions or things that you would like me to cover, Amy?
I've got a question for Kay. Going back to your marketing slide, could we go back to that, please? We can't. No. You had a point there about measuring measuring whatever your marketing success is. Could you elaborate a little bit further on that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So when you obviously marketing and getting in front of more people who don't yet know about you, right? So let's say you run a Facebook ad and it gets in front of 100 people and you get one inquiry from that, or maybe let's say you get 3 inquiries and one person actually decides to pay you for it and convert to a paying customer. Then you can actually look at that statistically and be like, well, for every 100 people that we get in front of, one person is going to buy. And so what are our numbers? We actually need 10 customers a month or a week to make this business viable. So we need to then go and get 10 times that 100 to get those 10 customers. So the other thing around that is you might put something on social media and get nothing. Maybe you send an email and you get some interest. So the idea is that you test a few different things and get to know, and different times of day and different wording. And that's why that target market information is so important, right? Because you then get to say, you're trying to understand, for me, how I do this is I'm actually sitting down and saying, all right, what are people saying to me? What are people asking me? And, where do we get stuck? And so, these conversations is me sitting down and going, why aren't people starting side hustles, or where are they getting stuck? Or what do they need help with? And then based on that, I go and create my content and advice.
It seems like it's a lot of information to manage. You're sending out these posts and you're tracking all this, and it looks like it's going to snowball very quickly into something difficult to keep together. And you know how it is that, for example, if we look at accounting, you've got special software to handle all of that accounting stuff. Is there any run-of-the-mill or any sort of software that somebody in a startup situation we should be looking at to manage their marketing side of things?
I think that it's in a startup situation, manage it as much as you can yourself, and just try 1 or 2 at a time and see how it goes. Because if you throw everything at the wall and you don't know where it's coming from, the traffic's coming from, then you lose you lose track of what's actually working. And the marketing and grassroots stuff and making phone calls. I spoke to a guy the other day. He goes and knocks on doors still and has a conversation. And I think all of you keeping your finger on the pulse and as close to your customer as possible from the very beginning is actually vital information, because you're there to serve them. So, if somebody sends me a DM and says, thanks so much for your podcast, it's like, great, which one did you listen to, and why did you like it? And so it's also, customers are looking for that as well. They're looking for brands who are connected and answering questions and available to them and that care.
Yeah, no, that's all good. That's the only question I had.
Perfect. We had somebody in here as well. What was the other one? How do you overcome fear of failure? There's no failure is going to happen. It's still happening 7 years in. It's about getting comfortable with fear of failure, I would say. It's going to be scary. Preparation, mentors and support, and people who are going to say, no, don't turn back. I can send some podcasts on that as well, fear of failure, because I've done a lot. When I was writing the book, I just got obsessed with research, and now I'm on all of these email lists that send me research papers about this stuff. So that's how I spend my weekends. But it's fear of failure it's really normal, and there's not one successful business owner that has ever gotten rid of the fear. We're all, it's going to keep growing the bigger your business gets and the more risk that you take, or, all of those things. So it's about getting clear on your idea, trusting and believing yourself that you have a good idea, doing that testing so that you can really be like, no, we've got the proof here. Surrounding yourself with people who aren't going to let you turn back, and do your planning. And the idea, I guess, is the fear of failure is how much you've got to have a level of risk that you're comfortable with. So if it's too high of a risk, like we said before with the goal setting, and it's too scary, then it's going to activate you into inaction and self-doubt and procrastination, and you'll abandon ship. So if maybe assessing what is a safe amount of risk that you're willing to take to reduce a bit of that failure. What was it? How did I get how was getting your first client? I was thinking about doing a podcast on this the other day, because no worries. So, is that my first customer was, I was having lots of conversations, again, going back to what Prabhu, I think, was asking about, the being connected to people's needs. So I was seeing, and I was surrounded by all these people who were really smart, had great ideas, but didn't feel like they could be in business. They're like, I'm not good at the business side of things. And so I would sit down with them and be like, hang on a second, yes, you are. And I'd just give it to them in terms that they could understand and that wasn't scary. And so that was my first customers, I guess. And then, eventually somebody said, oh, I put it out on my personal Facebook group. I actually got a reminder the other day. Then I was this dorky little post. But I just said, has anyone got an idea for a business or know someone? Let me know. And I think my first customer was $50, and I probably did about 3 hours of coaching. So now it's like much more than that. And it's definitely changed and grown, but I just got in the game. And I think that's the getting in the game part, is like, you might not enter with the premium price point or exactly, 7 years from now. But getting that paying customer, at least if they pay you something, it proves it, and then you can get that information. So when I was selling my 6-week course, there was plenty of knockbacks with that, and people wanting to, dragging you along for ages, which actually gave me information to say, I don't want a third party to be convinced that I want to teach this course. I'm going to go straight to entrepreneurs. I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to start a magazine. I'm going to, do one-on-one coaching. So that was a really big shift in my business. The podcast is on Apple and Spotify. And if you type in Startup Creative, which I'll find for you, you can jump in there, and I'll handpick some of these links as well, based on some of the topics. Cool. You can also find me on Instagram, which is startupcreative.com.au. I know Startup Creative, which is in there. But yeah, come say hi and send me a DM. Let me know how you went, what you got up to. How did I learn how to make podcasts? It's not really called. I mean, I literally bought a $200 Rode mic, RODE. It's called a Rode Podcaster. It's a USB mic. It plugs into my MacBook, and I record it onto GarageBand. And then you can edit it through there if you feel like sitting down and learning that skill set. There's heaps of support there, and you can upload it for free. You might want to pay somebody to do your editing, and that would be an expense, but not necessary, I don't think. If you want to start cheap and then maybe aim towards that, I think would be a good idea. And yeah, but $200 mic, and I've got a graphic done for probably $80 as well. And get some music done, things like that. I think I've got a checklist of what I did, podcast checklist that I've shared with clients before, so I'll send that over. How long did it say it's taking you to get this level? 7 years. Yeah, I was 23 in 2014, so I'm 33. So 10 years I've been doing this. Yeah, wow, that's great. No, 2014, so maybe I was 24. Yeah. That's how. Yeah, but it's been as like 7 years to get a book deal. And just as a little quick example, there is like the How to Start a Side Hustle. Everyone's so impressed that I wrote this book, and thinks that it's the best thing ever that I'm a published author and I got paid to write a book, and it's on Amazon. My part of my thing is like being, getting out there and being the expert and telling your customer who you are and what you stand for and that you can help with. I still do that exact strategy today. So when I moved to Melbourne a couple of years ago, I got there and I had a mentor and I said, I want to do some workshops. And he was like, why don't you go out and run some free ones with people who already have, you know, event spaces similar to these guys, and get a bit of an idea for the lay of the land and see if, you know, if people are interested. And so I went to General Assembly, I went to co-working spaces, I went to creative mornings and a few different spaces. And I think I ran How to Start a Side Hustle for free for 2 years straight, to the point where I was like, if one more person asked me how to write to do a How to Start a Side Hustle talk, like I will vomit. And then I was at a friend's birthday party and I sat next to a lady who worked a 30th birthday party drinking Aperol Spritz on the Sunday afternoon, and sat next to this lady who I must have told about my business. I think I had a few too many Aperol Spritzes, but I woke up to an email saying, I love your website and what you do. It's great to meet you. Will you write this book for us? And I went and met with her, and I look at that and I go, you know, I got up and I showed up and I wrote blog content, I put podcasts out, and I told people that I was an expert and I helped people, and I just kept showing up and putting one foot in front of the other. Eventually these doors open and the right people come across you. So I highly do recommend getting an Instagram page up or a website or some business cards, and even if you don't feel the part yet, start acting it. You know, it's that fake it till you make it. And I had a client who came to me and was like, she did sound healings with sound bowls, and was like, how, you know, I'm not getting any customers. I said, have you got your website up yet? And she's like, no. I was like, go and put your website live. And we did all this work and got her a plan. And then she called me 2 weeks later and said, Google's just found my website, and they want me to come in and do a sound healing for their staff. What should I charge them? And I was like, what? How do they find you? They Googled sound healing in Sydney or something. And I was like, this is the point. Like, go out there and tell people what you have, and you don't know how they're going to find you or, you know, where they will find you. But start, if nothing else, like if you go to Instagram or anything to do with Startup Creative, you'll see me repeat over and over, just start, because it's being in the game and, you know, giving it a crack is going to be your best chance of success. Yeah. I'm very cool and young and energetic and inspiring. Thank you. I feel energetic this week, not after the last couple of weeks. But thank you, I really appreciate that. Do I post on social media or do I have preferred platforms? Would you recommend a platform dependent? I personally post myself. Planoly is apparently a good one. Let me have a look for that link. I've tried outsourcing, I've tried giving it to other people, but again, and this is the target market stuff, right? My target market is, and my brand that I've created is all about straight up business advice, telling my personal story, you know, helping people be real and authentic and you know, available to help people and to be of service to my audience. And so, sorry, I think I did that direct message to somebody. But oops, and I've also done this one. The podcast one is there too. And so it suits my brand to be available and to connect and to share stories and to see how people are going. It's all information for me. So if you're a business that just needs to get information out there, maybe it suits you. But for me, it works best to be able to to be a real person on my brand and connect with my audience. And that was one of the biggest things I did through lockdown was, supported people and businesses that were freaking out and needed to go online and needed help. So, yeah. Thank you so much, Jessica. Thanks for being here. Thank you, everybody. I hope it was helpful. I've compiled a list of homework. We've got the target market check questions for you guys. You can listen back to this. I've got the fear of failure and a few other mindset podcasts that I'll send you. And then you'll also get, I'll include a podcast checklist for those who wanted to maybe get a podcast up and going. Highly recommended, by the way. And yeah, there's a bunch of, if you go to the resources tab on Startup Creative, there's a business plan checklist, a business checklist, a business plan template, and a bunch of other things as well. So jump on there, it's all free. Awesome. Thank you. Pleasure. Thanks for being here. Thanks for staying up late.
Thanks so much, Kaylene. That was awesome. And thanks everybody for joining us this evening. Any questions, I will pop my email down once more. And I'm happy to send over the recording as well.
Yeah.
And yeah.
You're welcome to send my email address as well. I'll put it in here as well.
Oh, awesome.
If anything comes up that you needed extra help on, or you were looking for coaching, get in touch and happy to help.
Yeah, awesome.
Perfect.
Thank you so much, Kay. That was
awesome.
really,
Thanks,
really inspiring.
Dina. I'll go say hi. Thanks, Amy. Thanks for having me, guys. Have a good night.
Bye.